Steve, thanks for joining us today. Quickly, for anybody that hasn't either seen you or met you or been a part of any of the stuff that you guys are doing, give us kind of the quick 30 to 60 second Steve Miller story as best you can.
The Steve Miller story. Well, I've had a great life by the grace of God. Had some success as a young man in the world of mixed martial arts.
Yep.
Got too old to do that and decided to go into the strongman performing world.
Yep.
Blessed from, genetically on my father's side. My grandfather was a world-class strength. My dad was a Navy frogman, and then I've got 5 world records in feats of strength. My son now has eclipsed all of us.
That's awesome.
But, did that for about 10 years. And then, what developed through all of that was this insatiable desire to mentor and train people. My father used to say, if you spend your life on something if you don't spend your life on something that will live longer than you will have wasted your time.
Absolutely.
So mentorship in the gym, training sessions, whatever, was always a big thing. But over the last 10, 12 years, our focus has really zeroed in on mentoring and building men.
Yeah.
In terms of personal life management, personal leadership development, and so forth. So that's where we are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know you're talking about the strongman stuff, and I went back and watched some of the videos, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Because I can remember seeing some of this stuff when I was younger, thinking, man, this is just ridiculously awesome. It's really interesting to think about that kind of the process of what we typically focus on for the show standpoint is we like to talk about how people are using technology, what content they're using, what technology they're using, and then how are they incorporating that in physical space, right? So if you break that down into the thought process of your content is basically the message that you're trying to get out, right? Or the message you're trying to get across to people, those kind of things. And then the technology, whether it's, like in a studio like this where we're doing a podcast, or if you're doing obviously the Ripley's thing as a perfect example, like the production value that goes into something like that, or even getting the message across, in the local church, right? The technologies that go into all of those things, it's been very interesting to kind of watch those progress. And I know you've seen quite a bit of that over the years. What do you think is your takeaway from a technology standpoint, both in the church world and in the production / UFC, MMA, some of those kind of things?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, pardon the reversal or interruption here, but first of all, I want to say I am super proud of you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And your team here for what you've built and what you continue to build. So kudos on that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, you mentioned the messaging, and I couldn't tell you, I certainly can't take credit for it. I couldn't tell you how exactly it happened and leveled out this way in my life. We'll just chalk it up to the grace of God.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I never took myself overly serious in terms of the different, chapters of my life, from the fighting career to the strongman stuff. It was, I took it seriously, but in terms of a prioritization, it was always secondary.
Right.
I knew what it was. You get out and do a strongman show in front of, a few thousand people, and you're rolling up frying pans and bending wrenches, all that. You get a lot of attention. That's great. But I was always aware in the back of my mind, well, maybe not even the back, maybe off to the side.
Right.
I was always aware that all this does is get attention.
Yeah.
And I believe that I'm held responsible by God for what it is I do with that attention.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it's always, I'm going to fight. I'm going to bend stuff, smash stuff, break stuff, get your attention. But most importantly, I have something to say. So listen to me when I'm done with the rah-rah stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so I think messaging is critically important because, we all know people, I'm sure, that have the capability, the financial wherewithal, and so forth to bring to the table tons of production value, resources, and whatever. But where are they going with it?
Yeah.
What are they achieving with it? What's the end game?
Yeah.
And I think that's critical to me.
What's the motive at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about with a couple of the other guys on the show, using it in different forms in your business, right? And so one of the reasons that I was excited to have this conversation with you is just because you've got such a varied background in so many different things, right? So walking through that with some of the guys in business, your messaging is, you're selling a product, or you're trying to get something in front of your customer, or, you're trying to fulfill an expectation for your customer. And so there are things that come along with that. on the other sides of that, like from the entertainment standpoint, like the entertainment itself is the product, like, right? That is the end.
Yeah.
You're trying to attract as many eyeballs as you can to then, whether it's advertising for another product or whether it's, to your point, having another message that you're delivering behind that.
Yeah.
Kind of seeing that progression in things, I absolutely agree with you. Like there's a time where you have to go back and like kind of assess, okay, what is my end goal with this? Like I've got the attention now, like now what am I doing with it? Right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So it's been very interesting to see that and have some of those conversations. In the house of worship church world, being in it as long as we both have, it's been very interesting to me from a musician standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, just to watch the technology shift, because I can remember way back in the day when it was like the slide projectors, with the clear slides that you had to change things. And now like it seems like most places have either some form of projection or some form of a video wall or some of those kind of things. How, are you seeing kind of in that space, do you feel like it's helping you get the message out, or do you feel like it's hindering the message, or does it just depend on how it's used?
I think it depends on how it's used. I mean, from as far back as you want to go, I remember the days when, early on, growing up in a pretty conservative church, when, just simple television was the big issue.
Right.
And everybody thought television is the one-eyed devil and
right,
all this stuff. And then there were guys that would go out and abuse it and give fuel and fodder to the guys making that silly argument. Yep. But then there were plenty of people, fast forward, that helped touch the world via that medium. So in technology, I've seen the same thing. I love all of it. I love the lights, the smoke, the dim rooms, the video walls, all of it. But again, I think the clearer you are on your messaging and your hoped for outcome, the better steward you will be able to be of all that technology.
Yeah.
Because I've been in situations where it was like, it was awesome to a point. It's helping you shut the world out and you're focused on God, and certain aspects of the songs you're singing and so forth are, exasperated by, lighting and scenery and whatever, which I love all of that. And then you kind of felt a certain moment where it's like, okay, hold on a minute. Now it's distracting.
Yeah.
A little too much. And usually that's chalked up to not being clear enough on the outcome and your ultimate vision to withstand the temptation of crossing lines and just going all in for, let's see if we can have the biggest explosion and the biggest this, that, and the other. So I think the clearer you are in your messaging and the ultimate service you're trying to provide, the better you're going to be able to utilize and
absolutely.
all the technology.
I think it's interesting. I've had this conversation with a couple of different people over the years. People always kind of go back and forth on that question of like, is more technology better in the church or not? Should we really have all the lights? Should we have all these other things? And it's always funny because I always go back and think to, what was the temple when the temple was built? What did it look like at the time? It would have been the height of technology. It would have been the height of like all of the things would have been, gold plated, and just, it would have been a sight to see, right? Like it would have been very, very much over the top in some aspects. But at the same time, to your point, each of those things had an intent. They had a purpose. There was a message behind it. There was something that it had to do with something that he was trying to speak into the world. Right? That kind of thing. So I totally agree with you on that. I think the messaging piece of it, understanding that clearly up front and then being able to design around that and facilitate that, to what you were describing, being able to facilitate intersections for people to come into that place, set the world aside for a minute, focus on him, that kind of thing.
And I don't think, some people that, try to weigh both sides of the argument feel like any caution or any conversation about managing and stewarding wisely the technology, whatever, feel like it's a little bit limiting and so forth. I don't see that. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a young man that I've played a mentor, role in his life for probably a couple decades now. Very much into all the technology and so forth, and trying to get into live events. Yeah. So we were talking about this very thing, and I said, what if you took segments of you? God created us to be very visual people. Yeah. We're visually stimulated. Well, what if instead of, fighting against that, I said, what if you're doing a worship song about heaven, and then you tell your technology and production team, guys, recreate the best possible version of heaven
right?
that you can.
Yeah.
That has to be stimulating and advantageous.
Yeah.
It has to be if you do it right.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. No, I agree with you on that. I think the messaging piece of that and having a clear vision on the front end of that and being able to articulate that and walk through that and pair it with the right pieces of technology so that it does, have that effect, right? So that it does point people in that direction of focus, right? And they're giving their attention to that thing, and it really does have an impact on them at that point.
And think of the interconnectedness of all of these things with the components that make up the bigger picture. For example, in the fight world, okay, you could go, okay, listen, smoke, lights, this, that, and the other. What does that have to do with fighting? Well, if you've ever been in an arena that was weak on their production, and the fighter walks out and the music's low or it's distorted, there's no real lights, there's no ambient, explosive, energetic environment. The fighter fight's different.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I've walked into arenas where it was, you step 1 foot in, through the hallway into the openness of the arena, and it is like getting jolted with, electricity.
Yeah.
And there's no way, I'm telling you from personal experience, that you can say that doesn't affect the fighter, because I fought better.
Yeah.
I lasted longer.
Yeah.
I did better just because of what the production value did to my own energy and so forth. So
I definitely think there's a piece of that. And I had this conversation with, I'm trying to remember who it was. I had a conversation with a few different people about when you're playing an instrument, as an example.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you were playing an instrument that costs more, you tend to play differently because there is a perceived, like, subconscious value in the fact that this thing costs more, so it has to sound better, so it has to make me play better and sound better and all of those kind of things. And I think to a certain degree, from a production value standpoint, I think that's true as well. I think when it's done correctly, and it's not overdone and overblown, but when it's done correctly, it adds a huge amount of emphasis. It becomes a force multiplier for the message that you're trying to get out. And again, like, taking this back to the business world, it's the same thing. Like, when you do technology right, whether it's digital signage in your messaging, whether it's your conference rooms that people are meeting in, that they're trying to connect, if they have a confidence in the technology, they're going to have more confidence in themselves.
Yeah.
If they walk into a space where, to your point, like, things are kind of in disarray, or it's not really what it should be, or it looks weird, or any of those kind of things, that does, I think, have some form of an effect on people, and it causes them to have less confidence in what they're doing.
It does.
Right, as part of that whole process.
Even especially the people that are responsible for leading a crowd or congregation, an arena full of people, whatever, into a certain experience.
Yeah.
It's funny, as you're saying that, immediately in my mind, I'm going back to these never-ending arguments that my mother and I used to have, because God bless her heart, she went to be with the Lord a year ago, April 1st. I'm a musician as well, which, by the way, if y'all don't know, this guy is one of the most incredible guitar players you'll ever hear. Just a little side note. But I'm a musician as well. I play 27 different instruments. But my main instrument is keyboards and piano, B3. And my mother, she had this old upright piano that she just wouldn't get it tuned, and it always sounded horrible. And every time I would walk into her house in Phoenix, she's like, "Son, sit down and play me something." And it just, to hear myself play on it, even, it's like, "Mom, I can't get any sense of enjoyment out of this whatsoever." But then, sit me down at a nice baby grand, well-tuned, and then you got to ask me to stop playing.
Yeah, and it definitely makes a difference. I mean, when your instrument is in tune, or when the production is dialed into where it needs to be, and those kind of things, it really makes it a lot easier to have a better performance, a better conversation, a better sales pitch meeting, whatever it is, whatever the thing is that you're doing.
Yeah.
If the things that you're using behind it are assisting you, they become a force multiplier. We had this conversation with one of the other guys on the show the other day. I watched the TED Talk with Paul Reed Smith, the guitar maker, and he was talking about their whole goal in making a guitar is whatever you put into it, Like if you put 100% into it, they want the guitar to subtract as little as possible.
Right.
Right. So if you're putting 100% into it, they want to get it to where you're getting 98 or 99% out of it.
Yeah.
Instead of it detracting from what you're doing. Right. And it's the same for me. It's the same thought process with technology, regardless of the environment, whether it's the house of worship world or whether it's the business world or stadium or any of the rest of that. Right. The technology needs it needs to add as little drag to your message as possible, so that everything comes out correctly. Like if your mic doesn't sound good when you're speaking, people don't understand you, that's an impediment to you getting your message out to the right people.
Yeah, or I can't hear myself.
Well, yeah, that too.
Or I'm speaking to a crowd and I hear myself in a delay. How confusing and frustrating that is, you know?
You get the Joe DiMaggio thing going on, you know, the luckiest man,
yeah.
you know, that kind of deal.
And I say to, you know, people, don't fight this. Stop fighting it. It's like anything else. It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
You know, every bit of new technology that comes out, the initial phase is everybody trying to figure out where they're going to settle on it, what have you. AI is the thing now.
Yeah.
Like it will not go away.
Yeah.
Social media was of the devil.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away.
It's going to continue moving forward. And I think to your point, I think the question is, it's a tool like anything else.
Yeah. So figure out now how to use it best,
and
use it wisely.
And it's up to you as the user to determine what are you using it for, you know, and do you have a positive influence and a positive message you're trying to get out to the world, or is it something different, right?
Yeah.
That's the user, right? And we talked about this before as well, as, you know, with technology, especially like in the business world, it's funny because oftentimes people will try and change behavior with technology when really like you're only going to do that from a behavior standpoint, right? Like you've got to address the behavior, you know, and the other things will happen. Like if you're naturally trying to collaborate with somebody because you want to, you know, move something forward, right? My natural inclination is going to be like, hey, I need help with this. You really know what you're doing in this area.
Yeah.
You know, help me out with this. Let's figure this out. This will be really great, whatever the thing is, right? But if you're not willing to have that conversation, if you're not willing to approach the other person, no technology is going to speed that process.
Right.
If you're not willing to reach out to them anyways, it doesn't matter how easy you make it to reach out to them. You're still not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's been interesting to watch that. It's funny you're talking about when something's implemented, people just give it pause, and it's the whole thing of like people hate change, right? We've seen that with a few different clients where they'll implement.
They hate change until they love it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say is like we've implemented changes in their technology, right? And in the beginning, everybody hates it because it's like a new thing. They have to learn how to use it. And then 6 months later, you know, when technology changes again and it shifts to something else, everybody's like, oh, we love this technology now. Why can't we keep this? And, you know, those kind of things. So it's funny to see the ebbs and flows with that, with people like when they understand, oh, change is coming, change is happening, you know, it's funny to just watch people's reaction to some of that.
And I find a lot of times that the resistance to the change isn't just because somebody wants to be obstinate or they're fearful or whatever. Oftentimes, and it's important to be able to see this so you can move them forward in a healthy way, but oftentimes they're kind of a purist in the sense of they're worried that embracing new technologies, new presentations, and what have you are going to hurt or detract from their ultimate outcome that they desire. Yeah. Which I can admire that because, again, we started off talking about how important it is to be clear on your objective, clear on your service, clear on the outcomes. Well, I can admire that, but I think if you just sit down with people and say, listen, let me show you, it's not going to detract from your product. It's going to enhance it. People come along.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because
hopefully.
Eventually.
Most of them.
It's funny you think about it in terms of like tools, right? There are some tools that never change, right? So a hammer is a hammer. There may be some design tweaks and some changes that happen, but hammer is still a hammer, right? But like things with, you know, as for instance, like a drill has changed dramatically over the last 100 years. I mean, originally it was a hand crank, and then it went to a wired power source, and then finally we're at wireless, you know, batteries, you know, doing all that whole thing. But it's the same tool. It's just a progression of moving it forward and making it more efficient, more effective, easier to use, more mobile, right? And we've seen that with countless technologies. I mean, the phone is a perfect example of that, right? You know, I mean, the phone started out as having all the infrastructure and the landlines and everything else, and now it's all wireless, and hardly anybody at this point, like when you talk to some people and they don't even know what a home phone is. It's just a funny conversation to have about the advances in technology and where they've gone, and how it affects it touches every part of our life in some way.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
But what do you think of? Because I was thinking about this the other day because I remember watching back in the day. I mean, this is probably, not even 25 years or more ago when UFC really started, way back when it was the very small thing and it was all different martial artists from all different disciplines and all of those kind of things. Yep. And to your point earlier, it was kind of like some of those early productions felt like the backyard wrestling club kind of, we don't really know kind of what the deal is here, that kind of stuff. And then how far that's progressed over the years and what it's turned into now. There's so many different segments of that, and there's so many different groups and, that kind of thing. And production value on that has skyrocketed. We talked to a guy here in town who was opening up a gym over on the east side. He was looking to do a ring and do lights and all that kind of stuff because they were going to start doing some fights there locally, and streaming them to to their smaller audience and that kind of thing. It's that whole thing has progressed so far.
Well, you're exactly right. Look again at the interconnectedness, for lack of a better word, of all the different components of that, because you can't just say, which for clarity's sake, have been in that world for most of my life, but I never fought actually for UFC. I fought for sister organizations, but nonetheless, I've been around it still. But you can't just credit, the skill level of fighters has dramatically changed. Well, yes, but think of this. So when I fought, right, there was no money in it.
Right.
We fought, and everybody who was fighting in these different organizations, they were something else, and they fought.
Yeah.
He's a paramedic, and he fights. He's a school teacher. You had to support your family.
Yeah.
And so fast forward from the 90s, late 80s and through the 90s for me, I'm fully aware that now you got 18, 19-year-old kids that are paid full-time salaries just to train. Yeah. Via sponsorships. Yeah. Well, of course, that's going to elevate the technical aspect of the sport significantly. But how did that all happen? Well, you could go, okay, all of the money to pay fighters and what have you is not just ticket sales. That's the least probably. You're talking about advertisers and sponsors and what have you. Yeah. Well, what's going to attract advertisers and sponsors? How well you can present their product in your venue, and how much you can raise the production value, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to, ooh man, how many thousands of people watched that fight, and look how it was presented, and the graphics and the clarity. I'm a novice when it comes to the technology part of it. Other than to say, I do understand the big stones, the drone perspective from it. Absolutely. So I think the interconnectedness of all that is, you bring greater production value. Even as simple as early fights, you maybe had 2 cameras. Yeah. Well, think of how much of what is going on the mat in that fight between those 2 fighters is missed. Exactly. Because you didn't get the right angle. You can't get to the angle. The ref steps in front of the way, and there's not a switcher to go to 4 or 5 other cameras.
I remember some of those some of the early fights. You'd have people like whether they got in like a submission hold or something like that. To your point, you couldn't see what actually happened.
What happened? The guy quit.
You just knew that the fight was over, right? Like, but to your point, like you couldn't actually see what was happening because there wasn't enough camera angles.
He didn't quit. He just quit breathing.
Exactly. That's funny.
So all of it together enhances the entire experience and that whole world of combat sports in that regard. And I think that might be a little bit of a jump to compare that to like churches. But still, in terms of principle, I think everything works that way. Yeah. Nothing is a standalone all by itself.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that. I think there are some base level principles. I mean, we look at that on our side of the fence when we're designing something for whether it's a house of worship or an arena or a conference room or whatever. There are certain things that we take into account as far as the user's distance from a screen so that they can comfortably see whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or whether it's a fight promo or whatever the thing is, right? Mm-hmm. We take those things into account so that the user experience as far as like their viewing to your point is a higher, not necessarily production value, but it's easier for them. It's more efficient for them. They don't have to strain to figure it out. They don't have to like, am I really seeing, what am I really seeing here? That kind of thing. Those are all things that, from a design standpoint, like those are the things to take into account so that you don't have those weird production pieces and some of those kind of things. Some of those principles, though, my point in saying all of that is those principles are kind of universal, right?
Right.
Creating a system that's easy for people to see, that it's easy to hear everything that's happening, all of those kind of, that's the same no matter where you are, right? There are variables in, is there a lot of crowd noise? Is there no crowd noise? Or are the acoustics better or worse? Or those kind of things. Those are all things that come into play with that, but it all kind of ties back to your point. I mean, they're vastly different areas, and so it's not really necessarily a comparison, but it's just that whole kind of thought process through the principles of, having a clear message, making sure you're using the most efficient technology,
We say it like this, leadership world, and I didn't certainly coin all these phrases, but all the cliches you want to list, success leaves clues, and all these kind of things, is that the principles, what it requires to build a great church, it's the same set of principles required to build a great physique, and a great baseball team, and a community, and a family. The methodology of implementation will change depending on what it is you're trying to build, but the principles at their core, they're the same. I think that certainly applies in the drone perspective of what we're talking about. It's the same principles. To put on a great event, to build something noteworthy, to get your message out. You have to pay attention to the principles that are timeless and proven.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because it's, all of these things come to a certain extent come back to storytelling, right? Being able to tell a good story, right? Whatever the story is and whatever the point of the story is and whatever the background motivation is, all of those things are ancillary to the fact of the principles of telling a good story are basically the same, right? Like you're walking through kind of the same kind of formula.
All the way back to Scripture.
Absolutely, that's the point. I mean, that's why.
What did Jesus do? His entire ministry was storytelling.
Exactly.
I love the one incident that when you remember the wild man at Gadara, talking about where he breaks these chains and he runs like a madman through the tombs. Jesus shows up, casts demons out of them into pigs. Your audience might not be all familiar with that. But anyway, the swine, they run over the cliff, whatever. This guy is in his right mind for the first time in who knows how long. He's delivered. He's whole. He's set free. Jesus and his team get in the boat to move on, and the guy runs to the boat to join the team. And Jesus says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, what are you doing in this boat? Step out of this boat. And he tells him, he says, go back to your land and tell your story. Well, most people that I've talked to don't make the connection, but when you keep reading that next port, if you will, that Jesus and his team land in, and the crowd was so pressing that they kind of poked fun at Jesus when he said, who touched me? Remember the woman said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. And he said, who touched him? And they said, come on, Jesus, look around you. Where did that crowd come from? The crowd came from that guy going back and telling his story.
Exactly.
So if you took that as the root of all communication, and is how effectively you are able to tell your story. Because your story has the potential to make all the difference in the world. How well you tell it and how clear you can make it and how far you can get it to reach is the difference maker. That's the game changer.
And that's the piece where I think at least for us on our side of the business, that's what we're trying to do is get it to a place where like whatever message you're speaking, whatever you're trying to do, there's as little drag on it as possible and it is going out as efficiently and cleanly and, all of those things as possible, right? So that you don't, to your point, like you've got a further reach because you did all the pre-work, like you answered all the questions, you figured all that out, right?
And you guys are set up here to do it amazingly.
I appreciate that.
By the way.
Great. We've enjoyed getting into the space and starting to use it, so it's been really good for us. So. No, that's awesome. What do you think was your most interesting takeaway from the Ripley's experience doing that whole production piece and rewatching that? I was so intrigued to watching it and like just watching the whole thing. It was so interesting to think the lady that was there that was jumping off was literally like her life was literally in your hands and like, but the production piece of that and all of the things that had to go into place for that. Like, what was the most interesting takeaway from that for you?
When we looked at the show afterwards, the completed production, the simplicity and the ease in which they made the whole process look.
Just how smooth it was. Yeah.
How smooth it was, contrasted to what my experience was.
Right.
Because when we got there, it's a 37-story tower.
Yeah.
And they had actually contacted me. A segment producer of the show reached out to me and said, we saw this guy try this feat in Germany from a water tower, and he failed.
Yeah.
But we think that a guy that can bend wrenches and roll frying pans has a good shot of being able to do this. So I had him explain the feat to me, and he said, we're going to have you and your team, we're going to fly to Vegas, we're going to have this, you'll have a person of your choice jump off this 37-story tower.
Yeah.
You got to stand on the edge of it and hold the bungee cord that she's attached to with your bare hands. Well, while he's explaining that, I see myself doing it.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And he chuckled, a very condescending chuckle. And he goes, he chuckles and he goes, I assume that you want to think about this for a little bit. I said, I just did. You explained it, and as you explained it, I thought about it, and I saw myself doing it. So it's done. Now it's just, let's talk about money.
Yeah.
The contract, whatever. So we get through all that. We get there, and the production team set up, and we started attempting to film at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
We get to the top of the tower, and that tower is swaying so bad.
Yeah.
The wind was horrendous. And we didn't try the feat and have to pause on it, but we got up there and got set up several times.
Yeah.
And then when we got up at midnight, a little after midnight, we finally made one more trek up to the top of the tower, and the wind had died down just enough to make it stop swaying so bad. And we did the feat, first take, boom, it was a success.
Yeah.
Then we said, the producer said, okay, we need more like drama. We need some more, we need you to fail on an attempt. So we're back up on the tower at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're filming me failing and not being able to hold after the feat's done, we succeeded with it. Yeah. So afterwards, when I'm watching it, I'm just laughing to myself, to my family, and we're thinking, this is such an indicative of life.
Yeah.
This looks so clean. Yeah. So simple. We showed up, and it was like 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's do it. Boom. And boy, if you knew the story behind and what all it required to lead up to the total production, and man, isn't that a accurate reflection of life?
Yeah. I mean, it's like everybody just talks about the example of the duck. Everything's calm on the surface, but underneath it's
panic underwater.
It's going crazy, right? It's the same type of a situation. It's so interesting because, like, to your point, some of these things, and even like nowadays in the age of social media, things, if you've crafted your message in a way that really makes sense, it's really easy to make anything look easy.
Yeah.
Or make people think that, you can be an overnight success almost instantly, right? And I think that's something that's lost on a lot of people these days is that, like, Dave Ramsey talks about it. I mean, when they finally made it on Oprah, they were this overnight sensation, but it was like, in his mind, they were,
it's 10-year overnight.
It's a 10-year overnight thing, right? So because they were living the day-to-day, pieces of that. So I think with that being said, I think there is also, like we're talking about, having a clarity of message and having a clarity thought process on what you're trying to drive forward and what you're trying to tell people, I think is one piece of that. I think the other piece of that is being very careful to not make it genuine and not make it, forthright and honest in the approach. And, obviously, I mean, things need to be edited for one reason or another, and you've got to do some of that. I get all of that. And I'm not saying that doesn't make sense and to show everybody all of the behind the scenes things. But at the same time, one of the things that I think has been interesting over the last several years is the internet, I think, has made it very easy for people to see when people are being genuine and when they're not, because we are constantly bombarded with, whether it's advertisements or other content or things that you're trying to draw as many eyeballs as possible or any of those kind of things. It becomes very easy to see very quickly, like, hey, who's really kind of being genuine and who's not, because subconsciously, like, people's brains are kind of picking up on the pattern of that doesn't really feel right, sound right, those kind of things. So
a couple things about that, because I get it. I understand when you're talking about crafting your production or your presentation and so forth together, of course you want to be attractive enough to invite people on the journey with you, and you don't want to give them all the daily down and dirties for fear of scaring everybody off. Not having, even God's method of communication, going as far back as to Abraham.
Yeah.
Abraham, leave where you're at and go to a land that I'll show you. Well, where are we going? What's it look like? How long it take to get there? None of it matters unless you're going to take the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
So God doesn't ever tell us all that we're going to go through.
Yeah.
He calls us and shows us clarity what we're going to.
Yeah.
And then sequentially and periodically he reveals little bigger chunks of that. But I think that times are different now because of the fact that for the last decade and a half, it became, like you said, it became so easy to craft superficially and present the ideal life that you wish you lived.
Yeah.
And convince everybody that it was authentic.
Yeah.
And I think people have reached this point where they're like, look, nobody travels to that many cities in a year and eats at all these amazing places every night.
Yeah.
Nobody. What's the real story?
Yeah.
And I think that is the cultural appetite now is people want to like, listen, show me the good stuff. Yeah, but show me the whole picture.
Yeah.
Because I'm not stupid.
Exactly. Oh, and that's what I'm saying. Like, to a certain degree, like the overabundance of information and access to information has made it really easy, at least in my opinion, has made it really easy to start spotting people who aren't totally genuine and totally for real and, you know, some of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to kind of watch that, you know, throughout business, throughout the church world, throughout like all of these different things. I mean, it's like once you start to see things, I mean, if you think about all of the things that have happened in the church world over the last, even just the last 5 years, you know, with different people, things coming out and things happening and those kind of things, it's very, you know, it's becoming more and more difficult to have any kind of thing that's hidden in the background, right?
I think it's a skill set. It's a learned behavior that involves some discipline, insight, some discernment, and whatever. Mm-hmm. The skill set I'm referring to is I think it takes a certain skill set to be able to tell that story in a way that is authentic, that does show. No, I mean, listen, when we read the scriptures, man, we know all the dirt about King David. Mm-hmm. We know about Abraham lying, and we know everybody's dirty laundry.
Yeah.
So if the great patriarchs and matriarchs of Scripture were not spared from the world knowing the whole story, why would any of us aspire to that?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I don't want to air all of my dirty laundry out, but I also don't want to say, I've been married 43 years. Yeah. I don't want to tell you it's been amazing honeymoon bliss for 43 years. Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, that's I think where, you know, some of that messaging, taking all of that into account on the front end of whatever it is that you're trying to get across to people, and not just making it just 100% the polished, you know, version. It's funny because it makes me think about this. So we did a lot of support previous to COVID, right, in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
In corporate environments and those kind of things. Generally, before COVID, in meetings, there was a lot less tolerance when things went sideways. And because everybody's expectation was technology should be working, it should be 100%, which I agree with, but there are just times when you have 50 parts in a room that are trying to make something work, that's 50 points of failure, and it's, I mean, you can manage that risk, but you can never eliminate it, right? But what was funny is when COVID happened, and I see this both in the church world and in the business world, as soon as COVID hit and everybody was forced onto Teams, Zoom, your video conference platform of choice, whatever it was, right? When they were forced to do that by themselves at home, like it drastically increased the tolerance of issues, because then they experienced it firsthand, like, oh, my mic's not muted, or my camera's on, or, you know, one of my favorite ones is the attorney who was going to court, or who was in court on Zoom, and he had a cat filter on. And so his face was a cat in the whole thing, and he's talking to the background like, "I'm here, Judge. I'm not a cat. I promise." You know, all those kind of things. So it was funny to me to watch the tolerance of people to be able to deal with those issues go drastically up from where it had been, and then like you go back in 2021 into 22, and you're doing some of these meetings with the same people. They have a far different outlook on all of that because of their personal experience, and now they understand like. There are 50 different moving parts in these things, you know, right? And so it's like, how do you navigate that with people? But to the point you were making, I think being a little more upfront and a little more genuine in messaging and those kind of things, at this point, I think people are starting to understand, like, that is the only way you're going to be able to do things moving forward, because there's just too much information available.
Well, yeah, exactly. Think of how hard some pastors used to be on people that didn't attend church every Sunday versus their graciousness after COVID, where it's like, listen, a huge chunk of my supporting congregation got so used to watching service at home, and they have genuine concerns and their thoughts have changed, whatever. There's a lot more catering to that.
Yeah.
You know,
I want to close out and kind of encapsulate some of this and talk through some of the leadership stuff that you've got going on, and some of the things that you're doing, some of the things that you're seeing, whether it's a technology that you're using to help you with some of the leadership coaching and some of those kind of things, or if there are some areas like that that you can provide some value to the listener on, whether it's a leadership principle or whether it's a particular thought process that you guys are using. I just would love to kind of talk through that as we get ready to close.
Well, our stuff is primarily about personal leadership, personal responsibility, taking the responsibility to manage the totality of your own life,
right?
Which is kind of,
Mm-hmm.
bouncing back from, I'll go back to the thought I left my head a minute ago, but came back now. It ties in with this. I remember a preacher saying one time years ago, he said, here's what most of us as preachers we do. We talk about the ideal of Scripture. And he said, but where most people live is down here.
Yeah.
The reality of life. So somewhere in between is applicable, sensible truth.
Yeah.
And I think that, COVID helped us, if you could see it that way, kind of come back to, wait a minute, let's stop glossing over the realities of where these people that we talk to, we entertain, we teach, we mentor and whatever, the realities of where they live compared to the ideal places I'm trying to present to them. Somewhere in the middle is a good landing spot, right? My version of leadership, I love the analogy that I think it was attributed initially to Gandhi, who said, which way did they go? How many of them were there? How fast were they going? I must find them, for I am their leader.
That's funny.
That's kind of been a paradigm of leadership. It's not good leadership, but in my years of training for fights and what have you, I'll give you an example. It was never just about me, or in any other fighter's case, it's never about one guy as the fighter going to the gym and just trying to become his best. It was a team of people. You got guys, it's 12 to 15 people in a training camp, guys holding focus pads, helping you run drills, sparring partners, guys helping you keep your diet dialed in, coaches, managers, and whatever. And nobody gets paid up front. They all stay committed to the process of fight camp because of a common theme, which is they believe in your ability to have enough personal discipline to show up early, be the last one to leave, ultimately get through your 12, 14 weeks and get to the weigh-ins or fight night and be the best possible version of yourself. So my leadership understanding came from, largely influenced by that season of my life, which is this. Real leadership is when people are following you based upon their confidence in your ability to lead yourself. And I think we're in a famine in America of authentic and real leadership. Because it's not a title, it's not a sign on the door, it's not guys in $3,000 suits at a press conference and looking like they got all together. And we find out later they've got 2 other families and an addiction behind the scenes, all this stuff. So I think that everything else, it doesn't make it automatic, but it makes it easier. If you learn how to effectively manage your own life development, and you're the CEO of your life. So our thing is about teaching people systems of personal life management and development. And anything you're involved in, and anything you touch when you're dialed in, is just going to be better.
Absolutely.
And so we've partnered with a couple of guys, Lloyd Bustard, Paul Goulet. We've formed a partnership, and we're launching these live events is one aspect of it, where we're doing this thing called the Growth Journey. You'll be able to go to thegrowthjourney.org. And we're doing these live events, but we're also trying to build a community of people that want to take this leadership development journey with us.
Yeah.
That's something that we're very excited about right
That's
now.
awesome.
In addition to, you know, what I do, it's never instead of or it replacing. It's in addition to what I do at Inspire, which is my real passion. I build men.
Yeah.
It's the same message. We're trying to teach men how to effectively lead and develop their lives. It's working.
Yeah.
It's working.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, having been to Inspire a few different times now and having known you guys for several years, it's been awesome to kind of watch all of that and be a part of that, you know, at different times. You know, so really, really appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you for taking the time. This was fantastic.
My honor, man.
Really appreciate the conversation. And it's, again, just kind of walking through all the different various pieces of things that you've done over the years has been really cool. Anything as far as if somebody wants to find you, get in touch, what's the best place for them to do that?
My website is circlebuilders.org, and that, you know, kind of lays out the premise of everything that we're doing in our life is based on. Yeah, they can find me there. You know, my books, my 5th book is coming out. I co-wrote with another gentleman. Yep. It's called The Ultimate Man,
awesome,
Jesus. I'm very excited about this book, but all of our resources and books you can find on the website.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you again for coming. This was fantastic.
Thanks for inviting me, man. It's my pleasure.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.